Sounds good. Okay.
Okay, there we are.
Okay.
We are live. So welcome everybody to the live stream for June 26th, 2018. It's me, Dana Morningstar, and of course, the wonderful Angie Atkinson.
Hey.
So how's your week going, Angie?
You know, it has been a little crazy, but mostly good. Mostly good. I'm kind of psyched about the whole. Are you doing the Instagram TV thing? I was just curious.
I am not. I just heard about this recently.
It just happened like a few days ago.
Yeah. Are you doing that?
I am. Yeah.
How's it going?
You know, it's new. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right now, mostly. I have one video that I actually made for them. The rest of them are just videos I chopped down to size.
Is there like a time limit on them, or is it like longer form content?
Longer form up to an hour. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a new place to reach people. So I'm giving it a shot. You know, we'll see. I don't know if it's going to last, but it might.
You never know with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Facebook, they have their Facebook Watch thing too. And I haven't gotten, I feel like I can barely manage what I'm doing. I really do need to get somebody like an assistant or somebody who knows tech stuff better than I do.
It is a very good
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Try to manage.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, let's see who is here today. I've got C. Megan, Michael, and new Chris so far. So welcome.
Hello and welcome.
Katie is here.
Right on.
Chris, are you still in Rome or are you back?
Hey, Ron. Hey, James. So weird. I put my thing up on a what's it called? This thing, a tripod, and now I feel like whenever I look down, I'm way down. Anyway.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, I'll tell you, my latest thing has been going into recording my books into audiobooks.
Oh, awesome! How's that going?
It's an interesting learning curve. I was going to be recording in my house, and then, the house, that's not going to work anymore. So I decided I really want to get this done. So I went ahead and recorded or rented some time in a studio.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I did, because it's just so much more professional than the equipment that I had at home. And but one thing I didn't kind of anticipate was how difficult it is to read your own work.
Ooh, interesting.
Oh my gosh. And to not want to edit it. Because, you see it and you're like, whoa, okay, I want to add to that. Or it's so difficult. So the first day I ended up calling the session off like 3 hours early.
Oh no.
Because I was just like, this is just really mentally taxing and really stressful to read my own stuff. And so I went home, and then kind of the big lesson learned was to print it all out and then read it ahead of time.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it takes me about an hour to record 10 pages. So I read through and I mark it up and all that. And then I go record, so I went yesterday for 3 hours. And so, yeah, it's kind of just a fun new learning curve, but frustrating all the same. So hopefully that'll be done. Those books will be out by the end of July, middle of August.
Right
so
on.
We'll see. I'll keep you posted on how that goes.
I'm excited to hear.
Yeah.
I haven't even thought of doing that yet. That's crazy. That's awesome, though. That's really cool. I like it.
Yeah. So let's see what's going on here in the chat.
We have James saying, I know this is more for abuse recovery, but dating is hard. I feel like a little boy. I see dead people, or I see narcissists, he says.
Yeah.
I can relate. I think Dana can relate as well. It's definitely not easy. But knowing as much as you know, James, I know you've educated yourself really thoroughly. So trust yourself, trust your intuition. And if you're not ready, then give yourself a minute before you get back out there. Dana, what would you add to that?
Yeah.
Crazy.
And I know we've talked about this a lot, but for new people that might be here, this is so common for people to get back into dating or just kind of out back in the world. And they're like, man, I really feel like I see narcissists everywhere. What's wrong with me? Am I losing my mind? Am I paranoid? Is this because of my PTSD?
Mhm.
Am I dysregulated because of the abuse? What's going on? And that can be definitely part of it. But more often than not, it's more of you're waking up to what problematic behavior is.
Mhm.
This stuff has always been going on around you. It's just that you've been glossing over it or minimizing it.
Yeah.
And so it's weird because I think too, we might, like, the more you educate yourself on it, the less maybe hypervigilant you'll feel, because right now, especially in that kind of beginning stage when you're getting back out there, you still might not be able to pinpoint why certain things are problematic. So it can feel like you're hypervigilant.
Mhm.
The more you educate yourself, the more you're like, oh, okay, that's why. It's the triangulation or the provoking or the crazy making or just the running hot and cold, or there's reasons to it, but you might just not have the vocabulary to identify it yet.
Absolutely.
So like Angie was saying, if you're feeling like something's off, I'm a big fan. Err on the side of caution, just pull back,
Mhm.
get some distance between yourself and that person, especially if it's online dating. I mean, that's such a online anything anymore. There's so many scammers and just predators and rotten people with bad intentions out there. And if a person's not used to online dating, or this is new to them, or they haven't been on it in 5-10 years, it's like you can't take anybody for face value.
Yeah, you have to take it all with a grain of salt for
For
sure.
real, and like really have to just go slow and guard your time, because there's no shortage of, like I said, people with bad intentions or that are married or they're just looking to cheat in general.
It almost feels to me like at this point there are more of those people than the genuine ones. So you almost have to, it's like you're shopping at a thrift store and you have to really dig to find the gem, and I know
Yeah,
that sounds funny, but that's how it feels to me. Yeah, for
I would
sure.
agree. Anybody can be anything online.
Mm.
And it's, just because they say that they're single or they say that they're an engineer or what have you, and it can feel, I struggled with that so much getting back out there, because I had all these other people that were like, well, but I met my husband online, or, you got to trust sometime. And I just kind of felt like, well, maybe it is me then. Like maybe
It's
I'm broken.
No, I don't think that's it at all. I think other people could feel the same way, but the fact is, I'm going to be really honest with you. I met my current husband online, but
Mhm.
it was like 16 years ago. So 17 years ago. So it was different at that time. And there was no Google. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it was a whole different world, but at the same time, it was like I was ashamed of it. I didn't talk about it publicly. I didn't even tell my family because I was embarrassed about it. And so it's now everybody's just like, yeah, we met online, big deal. But it was embarrassing to me at the time. And so I guess my point is, so while time has made it easier to meet people online, it's also made it easier for anyone who wants to, hurt people, scam people, troll people. There's one person I know who literally his biggest thrill in life is to troll
Mm.
people, which basically means to, abuse them,
Yeah.
really. And I think that's crazy. But yeah, and here, Free Kevin, he says, I've always said the internet is a liar's paradise, and that's the damn truth. It is. Sorry for saying it that way, but yeah. And go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's not what it was back then. I met my first husband, my ex-husband, online
Yeah.
as well. And it was the exact same thing. But back then, I don't even think we had photos up. Like it was very much like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. Let's go meet for a drink kind of thing. And the level of trust was there. There's a very famous YouTuber by the name of Philip DeFranco.
Oh yeah, I know him. Love
Okay.
him.
Yes, I do too, right? And he was catfished. Like,
I heard.
Yeah, like I don't know, a long time ago,
Yeah.
15 years or so ago. And
Yeah.
he's a really smart, grounded, down to earth guy. And
Mhm.
he got tangled up with a gal, who was sending him pictures. They had this back and forth on the phone and emails and all kinds of stuff. And he basically sold everything and went out to, I forget where she was living, California or someplace, to go see her, to go meet her. And like, she didn't show up. And it turns
Mhm.
out none of it was real. I think she was like a 15-year-old girl. And
Yeah.
it was like not even anything close to what she'd said. And he was so horrified and embarrassed. And I think, it's one of those things, like, he's a smart guy. Anybody can get tangled up in this stuff. And back then, online scams in general, it just wasn't on a normal, decent person's radar to watch out for it.
Truth.
And
Yeah.
that's the good news with YouTube, or the good thing with like YouTube and internet stuff now, is people are talking about it. So it's on people's radar. If a Nigerian prince emails you wanting to give you $1 million, and then you give them 900,000 and then you can keep
Mhm.
100,000, kind of a thing, like,
That
we
doesn't
now
work.
know, right? It doesn't work. Or if somebody on Craigslist wants to write you a check for an item that they want to buy, or that they want to ship something overseas to you,
Yeah.
or what have you, like, we know that now. But unfortunately, so many of these lessons are hard won.
Yeah. And another point of value here, I think, is that, you know, most people who are internet savvy are aware of this. But what I'm seeing a lot of lately is like somebody's grandma, somebody's, mom who's, 60 years old being sucked into something like this. Sometimes they're widowed and they're lonely, and sometimes they're just, vulnerable, and they will take everything they've got and then, dump them, never show up, and sometimes mostly romantic scams, but sometimes even, feel sorry for me stuff, oh, my child has, all these diseases and needs all this help, or, and these poor people, they're falling for it. And I've actually written about this before, because it's a more common issue than you think.
Yeah.
So grandma finally gets Facebook and starts, emailing people, and everybody's excited, but they miss the fact that she's secretly, involved with some Nigerian prince or whatever. And that's something. It's upsetting if you think about it.
It is.
But
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say they'll go anywhere. They'll do it. They don't have limits.
Right. Yeah. Evil doesn't have rules.
Yeah.
And the more vulnerable a person is, the more kind of the low hanging fruit they are for a
Yeah.
predator. My mom's neighbor is elderly, and she was taken in by an online dating scammer and lost everything. And her daughter ended up buying her a townhome next to my mom. And, her daughter gives her an allowance, but like, now her daughter like watches all of her money and I think she even cut off internet, because her mom was kind of getting to that age. There's a little bit of dementia setting in, and like,
Mhm.
there's not a lot of good judgment there. So
It's
it's,
hard.
it's so sad.
Yeah.
And this stuff can happen in person too. There was a gal uh, that was a kind of long story short, like a friend of a friend, and she had met a guy online through, I don't know, like Plenty of Fish or whatever. They hit it off. They decided to go to the casino. He decided to go to the casino for their first date. Well, then he's like, oh man, I left my ATM card. Can I borrow, like $500? Well, somehow he was able to just get her to raise her limit on her card and pulled out all kinds of money. And then she never heard from him again.
Oh, that's horrible. Of course she didn't hear from him again. See, you can't
Right.
trust people. I mean, that's crazy. I don't know. And like Doreen says, although I love the internet for access, or for instant access to information, it does seem to be extremely useful to narcissists and other disordered people. Truth. Nikki Lee adds, predators love vulnerable people. Of course they do. It's their favorite thing. Yeah. And Kevin says, it's a tool, a weapon like anything else. It's the intention of the person using it that matters. And that's the truth, I think. Yeah, I think that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see this question from Dandelion Greens? I don't know if that's
No, but I'm more than happy to answer it.
okay.
She says, hi, Dana. I gather that your ex-husband was maybe not a narcissist, but did he fail to fill your buckets of feeling loved or not important, and so on? My My ex-husband is, I would, for the most part, a really great guy. He was in the military. And so when we were married, he was gone a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He was gone probably about as much as he was home. So it was a very lonely existence for me. And we were moving around constantly. So not only was, and I'm okay. Like I can entertain myself. The hard part was I didn't have any friends. You know,
Yeah.
we would get someplace new. And I remember one time this one gal, and I was like, man, I can so relate to this. We were at a party,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a painting party thing. And somebody had asked her name, and she said, "Oh, no, don't get invested in me. We're leaving next week." And she was kind of, she was joking. We were all military spouses.
Oh yeah.
And it was that realization of that's exactly how it is. Like you just quit becoming emotionally attached to people because everybody's going to leave in 2 years.
That's rough.
And it was really rough. And so I didn't anticipate that. And like I said, he's a great guy. We didn't have a ton of stuff in common, and I didn't realize, and I didn't have a solid grip on who I was when I married him. And he had a solid grip on who he was. So that caused me a lot of anxiety and kind of just this pressure of like, I need to figure myself out. And I didn't know how to do that. And yeah. So.
Right on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think sometimes even there are many situations where you have two non-narcissists and things don't work out for some reason or another. It doesn't, not every ex is a narcissist. I mean, that's, that's clear. Absolutely. And I think, on top of that, I think sometimes we end up, especially before we fully understand, like you said, you didn't really have a handle on who you were at that point, or fully at least. And I think that sometimes lends us to blend better than we mean to. Do you know what I mean? Like we're like, oh, yeah.
That is really well said. And there's, I think, a very solid chance that a lot of people don't even realize how much they've lost themselves, or how much they've kind of morphed into what they feel they should be until they do divorce. And then it's like really feeling adrift at sea.
Yeah, I definitely did. I think that in some ways, even like with my current husband, I didn't even know anything about narcissism when I met him. I just got lucky. But if I'm being honest, I think I misled him in certain ways in the beginning. Not because I meant to, but because I was not, like you said, I didn't really know who I was entirely. I mean, this was 16 years ago that we met. And so I think I was trying to show him, who I thought I was, but I don't know that I was that person. And I think I blended better than I should have at the beginning, but it's been resolved. But it took counseling. We had to go work some stuff out. I mean, it happens, but yeah, that's why I think it's such a good idea to understand who you are before you take that step. But of course we always can, 2020 hindsight and all that, I guess, but yeah. And I mean, that's a pretty raw thing for me to say, but it's true. It's been a long time. And I think, the person I was then, I was still being controlled by my mother in so many ways. And, I still had some serious wounds from my ex. I mean, serious, like, I don't mean physical. I mean, emotional wounds. I was not, and I waited 4 years. I mean, I thought I was totally healed, but I don't think I was.
Yeah.
But I didn't know then what I know now. And so I feel like it doesn't take everybody 4 years or 5 years or whatever. I think it's a matter of understanding. And I didn't have access to people like us who were able to say, well, this is this and that, to show the way. I just sort of had to blindly walk through it. So it worked out well in the end, luckily, but it was definitely a bit of a challenge for a while.
Yeah. And it is huge. I mean, having life coaches such as yourself and people that really do, I mean, can really help guide other people, videos on YouTube, all of these resources really help to shave years off of a person's learning curve. And I mean, I was wandering around in the desert looking for answers for years, and I just didn't know. And,
Ditto.
you know,
I think that's why we do what we do, right? I mean,
yeah, for sure. That was one of the biggest, like, I had so many things going through my mind after the fire. And one of the bigger ones was, oh my God, I have so much I want to say, like so many books that I want to write before I die. And I know it's a really morbid thought, but it was just like, it was like this anxiety of like, oh my God, I could have, just crazy thoughts. Like I could have died in this fire. Nobody has access to my Dropbox. And then even if they do, like these books aren't done and I need to have these come out. Like, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And
I get it.
It's weird. So yeah, I've been like writing like a fiend over the past month because I'm just like, I have got to get this stuff out. And
I love that you said that. I love that you said that because I want everybody here right now to listen to that and realize that it could have been any of us. Any of us could have found ourselves in that same boat going, oh my God, I didn't do XYZ, whatever it is for you. And I think that's an intense reminder of what you're meant to do. So if you ever had an experience similar to what Dana went through or anything that where you felt like I might not make it through this, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about this. You know, if you felt like you wouldn't make it through it and then you thought to yourself, I didn't do this, or I didn't write those books, or I didn't, you know, paint that thing or do that, whatever it is, then do that thing. I mean, I think that's amazing. And I think that's really telling as to what you're supposed to be doing. So that's beautiful. I love it. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder. Yeah. Love, love, love it.
Here's a great comment from Claudia who says, my son once told me, never give all of yourself to someone because then there's nothing left for you.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
it's true.
Out of the mouth of babes. Yeah,
yes.
It's true.
Yes. So true. And, you know, I try to tell, I have an article somewhere called Why You Must Follow Your Passion Even When You Have Children or something. And it's basically that sentiment. It's about changing, you know, recognizing that even though you want to give your whole self to your kids, if you have them, then if you do, then in 18 years, you're not going to know who you are at all. You have to be yourself as well as a mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or whatever you are, aunt, uncle, whatever. But yeah. I wanted to ask you, Dana. Miss K says, are Dana's new books, The Narc Playbook and Lessons Learned, planning to come out in 2019? I would like to order them as one package with the diary, but if the diary gets sold before, I'll have to order it sooner. Do you want to talk about
that? Sure. Well, the diary, and I'll show you, it's right here. Hold on. I don't know if you know about these, Angie.
I do not.
Cool. If I come out to see you, I will bring you a copy. You have to let me know which one you want. So I did 2 journals. This one's covered in soot, but if you buy one, it won't be. It's just the one that I took out of the old house.
Right.
But it's an insight journal. And so there's a
very cool
version and then a 1-year version.
Awesome.
And it's a bunch of different questions for like introspection and getting to know yourself and these kinds of things.
I love it. It's pretty.
Thanks. Yeah. So these are all print on demand. So they will never sell out. They'll always be available. The other books, I think there's a solid chance they'll be out by the end of this year.
Right on.
So with the rate we've been going.
Let's do a book launch party for you.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, it would.
Something I need to get better at is celebrating my victories.
Yes, girl.
Yes.
Celebrate.
Yes.
Hashtag self-love. Okay, moving on.
Yes.
Self-acceptance, whatever.
Right.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, Eric says the bittersweet reality of getting past the narc as now eyes wide open. I will carry this till I'm no more. Oh, this is very having always to be okay. He's saying always having to be on guard, but because of that, making the right choice if possible. You know, I get that, but I think that you've got to find a happy medium there, right? You have to find a place where you can be aware, but not paranoid, a place where you can be relaxed, but not overly trusting, not blindly trusting, aware and seeing. you can get there. It takes time. Dane, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a healthy degree of skepticism in all contexts is always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
When a person is used to taking other people at face value and instantly trusting them until proven otherwise, setting boundaries and saying, kind of having that healthy degree of skepticism and kind of backing things up a little bit can feel like a person's on high alert.
Yeah.
But you just kind of get comfortable with that and it just becomes a part of who you are, and over time, then that's not so much of a thing. Like, here's an example. The recording studio the other day, the guy was saying, basically, how did you find me? And I said, I really liked your studio. It looked like a professional setup. And he was telling me that he had another client who had responded to a place on the internet and it was in a guy's basement.
Ooh.
And I had made the comment, I was like, I would have just left. Like, there's no way I would have even gone inside the house. And he kind of looked at me like I was being a little hyper vigilant, and I didn't even care because I was like, no, that's so like not even up for debate. I'm not going to go to some rando guy's house. And even if he does have a recording studio in his basement, no way.
And I love that you said you just didn't care what he thought, because that's what we all need to get right there. And I think your point is completely valid, by the way, about not going downstairs and to the basement of someone's recording studio when you don't know them. But I think at the same time, I wanted to pull that point out that you were like, I just didn't care because there's still no way. Because a lot of us as empaths, we care so much about what other people feel that we will literally put our own safety at risk just to like schmooze somebody or keep somebody from feeling like we're over vigilant or we're too whatever. And I think that's really, I think that's really speaking to your own self-acceptance, I think that's good.
Yeah. I think a lot of getting really grounded in that came after reading the book, The Gift of Fear. Have you ever read that?
I have not read that one.
It's fantastic. I don't know if I'd read, there's some pretty graphic scenes in there. So if anybody's got some, not okay with that, just kind of a heads up. But he really talks about instinct and like slowing down, and that there are signs that something's off. And sometimes it's the little things like that. You're like, that's kind of weird. Like, why, even if it's a legit thing, there's a lot of other situations that are like other recording studios where you don't have to feel uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Like another example of this, I was talking to my mom the other day, and she volunteers at a homeless shelter. And it was part of what she does is she goes back and people have different storage lockers. And she was telling me about this guy the other day, and she was letting him into his locker. And she's like, it was just so weird. She's like, he was giving me the creeps. And she's like, I couldn't really figure out, he didn't really say anything. She's like, but he just kind of kept talking and apologizing for taking so long. And so I was like, well, did you feel like he was trying to kind of buy time? And she's like, oh, well, now that you mention it, yeah, there was another guy in there. And she's like, and it did kind of feel like he was waiting for the other guy to leave. And
that's interesting.
Yes. And I said, okay, well, like, let's examine this. Why do you feel that you continue to stay in there? And even though you were getting creeped out, and she's like, well, she didn't really have anything in particular to point to say like, this is what he's doing. It's not like he grabbed her tush or was doing anything outrageous. It was just all of these little things that seemed off. And finally a coworker, they were getting busy up front and said, hey, I need you to come, or a co-volunteer lady said, hey, I need you to come up front. We need you. And that got her out of there. But I was just like, oh, Mom, the safety training concerns me because, that's what it is. It's like a little situational awareness of little things that are off. And so for us, like in our normal life, if we're dating people, I think a lot of people, if they've been out of the dating game for a long time, this goes for men too, meet somebody in a public place. And I think a lot of women are a little like put off by that. They're like, well, he should pick me up. And in this day and age, like you don't know this person. Like you don't, even if you click online and you've been talking and you feel this connection, you don't know. And then if they're weird Now they know where you live.
Yeah. Yeah. And on top of that, you have to remember that toxic people are very good at pretending to be your perfect person.
Yes.
And you don't, without even realizing it, sometimes we tell them exactly what we want, and then they become it for the short term. And I think that's important to remember, especially when we're talking about online stuff. Here's I don't know if you wanted to continue about that, but I have an interesting question from Tatiana.
Yeah.
She says, do you think I can feel like a victim of narcissistic abuse if I am a narcissist? That's a great question. I mean, first of all, I would question whether you were actually a narcissist, because generally, generally narcissists do not self-identify. Can you feel, I think a narcissist could, and I've seen it. I've seen narcissists who say, I'm being abused by this person or that person. And then when they tell me their story, I'm like, are you really, because what happens is, it's called narcissistic injury. And what usually happens is that somebody uses the buzzword narcissist or NPD, that person Googles, and then that person projects their own qualities onto someone else. But again, narcissists don't usually say, I'm a narcissist. So I don't think that's your problem, if that's what you're asking, Tatiana. But I want to hear Dana's thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, narcissists don't normally, I mean, it's such an overused term nowadays, and there's lots of people running around being like, I am a narcissist. And it's like, you guys,
you don't even know.
Yeah.
Not you guys, but
yeah. I mean, if you have problematic behavior where you're like, man, I do X, Y, and Z, and I don't like that about me, or that's something that I want to work on, then it's workable. I mean, the biggest problem with narcissists is they're so deeply unaware. Like, they're just stuck in that stage of emotional development where they're about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
So there's just not that level of insight.
Yeah. And I think we tend to see, I've seen a lot of what I call narcissistic fleas or whatever. I didn't make that term up. But where when you're raised by a narcissist, or you spend a lot of years with a narcissist, you kind of pick up some of their selfish habits, and you start to think that, like, for example, I watched a woman run the whole damn house and be the boss of everything. And, basically everything revolved around that person. That was the model that I had for marriage. And so you can imagine my horrified surprise when I found out it was an equal playing field, and that I had to let him help decorate or choose things at least, and all this kind of stuff. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. But that was a flea, so to speak. That was a leftover piece. I don't actually need to be in control of anything except for my own personal self and certain things with the kids, because I would got to keep them safe or whatever. But other than that, I'm like, whatever. In fact, I don't even, I have someone else who's the boss for me of my own company, because I don't want to be. So like, she talks to me and then she talks to everyone else. I don't have to, like, you know what I mean? It sounds weird, but I don't need to be or want to be in control of everything. But I thought that was my job as a female growing up, because that's what I saw. And so, it certainly can throw you off when you're not. My point is, it might just be something else. It might be that you are, obsessed with cleaning every square inch of your house 3 times a day, or it could be anything. It could be that you only will drive blue cars because that's what you were taught to do, or whatever. It's a leftover. And I think for me, going through the phase where I had to start to when I went no contact with my narcissist parent, initially, I went through this long period where I was questioning everything I knew to be true, everything. And I'll tell you one quick example. I think I may have said this here before, I'm not sure, but basically I was at the grocery store. It was just a few months after I'd gone no contact, and I was really in that self-examination phase, where I was trying to figure it all out. What did I really believe? And the lady behind the counter was an older lady, older than me, grandma age looking, like a traditional, I don't know, 70-year-old, something like that lady. Like, she was just working part-time or whatever on her retirement, I guess. And she She goes, here's your change, honey. And I was like, thanks. And my initial reaction was to be PO'd and irritated and bristle that she called me honey. And that was never, I don't know why that bothered me, but then I thought about it. Well, it was because when I was 10 years old, I was told by a narcissist, I don't like when people call me baby or honey or sweetie, because that makes me think that they are, looking down on me and being, acting like I'm less than them. But that's not really what people are doing, especially when you're a 20 or 30 something and we're talking about a 70-year-old, you know what I mean? And so I had to, like, certainly if I was like, oh yeah, honey, tell me all about it, honey, but it wasn't like that. It was a genuine, here you go, honey. So I literally had to rethink that whole thing. And I thought, does it bother me if somebody calls me honey or sweetie or baby? Well, no, not usually. And as long as I'm not like walking down the street and they're like, hey baby, or whatever, So it was a matter of changing my perception, I guess. I think I got off, but you know what I'm saying. Okay.
Well, I think it's like context, right? So to take that exact same example, let me flip it, because I had the opposite realization.
Okay.
Is I never thought it bothered me when people called me hun or babe, or honey or sweetie or any of that. And then
Right.
I realized not too long ago that I wasn't okay with that. Like if it's a 70-year-old woman, or if it's even if it's a woman, it's context. I mean, if it's a woman,
that's a good point.
Term of endearment, like here you go, sweetie, or like, in your situation, yeah, I would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
But if it's when I was working as a nurse, we had one guy in particular who would always call, and he would, whatever nurse he talked to, hun, doll, sweetie. And I finally was like, my name is Dana.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, it was just was the context, because it was like, you wouldn't call your doctor hun, doll, sweetie, I would hope, right? So it was just more of like a weird little
way to disrespect you.
Yeah,
to minimize.
Yeah. And he might not have even been aware of it, but it was just, I don't know, it was disrespectful.
It's a valid point.
And same thing with dating. Let's talk about that for a second, because I get this all the time in the support group. People will say, oh, and this is just a person's boundaries coming into focus. Like this is just all part of the journey of it all. But they'll say, oh, I just started texting this guy or this gal. I met him online a few days ago, and they'll post screenshots of their texts. And what's interesting is that they're still, and again, it's a process, right? They'll point out when things really went off the rails, or this person starts calling them a name or starts getting aggressive or using all caps, like trying to make their point or really escalating. But if you go back earlier, it'll be, hey babe, hey doll, send pics, kind of like inappropriate stuff before that. And it was interesting because my mindset was kind of the same way back then. It was like, well, I don't mind if somebody calls me hun or babe, like with a guy, it's a term of endearment. But then I now realize, I'm like, you know what, giving pet names like that with a total stranger, it creates this level of closeness that's not really there.
I agree with that as well.
Especially if a person's lonely and you can think, oh, this is so great, warm and fuzzy, but it's like, it's just somebody kind of rushing that level of intimacy. And frankly, they're probably just looking for sex. So.
Yep. I totally agree. And I would bet you that, especially for men online, and no disrespect to any of our guys here, I know you guys are different, but a lot of, I think men are going to have a better shot of finding a decent woman through a dating app than vice versa. Let's be real. And the reason I mentioned the dating app thing right now, Dana, is because, I think it was James. I just saw somebody ask, what do we think about dating apps? And so I thought I would note that, but I think it's about, always about doing your due diligence, understanding what you're dealing with, watching for these certain little red flags. There's so much documentation out there about what to look for, but using your intuition and like, I know somebody says Dana advises go out for a short coffee on the first meeting, easy exit. I think that's great. But again, I wouldn't even meet someone unless you're, pretty sure that you want to. Yeah. Do you disagree? I mean, I'm not saying, I think plenty of women are out there scamming, so don't just take that as like a pass. But I would say that you're going to find less women who are just looking for sex, and you're going to find less women, but probably equal amounts who are looking for money.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the number one thing I think the problematic men out there are looking for sex. The problematic women are looking for money.
Exactly. I think
So
that's right.
and you can kind of sniff it out. I mean, I think with the really, with the male version of these scams, it tends to be, this woman's like a gorgeous, like a bikini model kind of looking woman. And all of a sudden she's a 10 and she's taken super interest in a guy who's 20 or 30 years older. Like you can kind of tell a great examples of all of this that if you want to see this kind of behavior, male or female, play out, is there's the TLC show 90 Day Fiance.
Oh.
And it's really great because you can tell by, like, these people are not a match in any way, shape, or form. They have nothing in common except one person wants citizenship, the other person has citizenship.
I have not even seen that yet. I've seen it advertised. Didn't know what it was.
It's a great show to see how people kind of get roped into that. You can see a lot of like the cognitive dissonance going. You can see a lot of kind of the justifications from their friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And just this, and they're not even like really great manipulators. Although this one woman, oh my God, she's something else, is just awful. And she makes no bones about it. She's like, she's like, I married him for money. He said he had money. I came over here. He has no money. And she just keeps trying to pull as much money out of this guy as she possibly can. And they got married. And this guy is thinking, in his mind, he's like, but we're married and commitment's forever. And it's like, dude, you made a mistake. Like, you made a huge mistake. This chick is obviously not, she married you for citizenship and your money, and you're in trouble. Like, she's a predator and you need to run.
Yeah. And I think that's an excellent point because, while most women aren't, like, I think you were spot on when what you said with what you said about men, sex, women, money, because I think that's probably the biggest fear, and not always just citizenship. I mean, I'm sure that's a common thing too, but just the money factor. I mean, and a lot of people will present their best selves to someone they just met. And so some of these women, or whoever they are, now I don't even know that all of them are women, but some of them are very skilled at detecting early on if you have money or not. And I think that's part of it. I think most men, the ones who are out for just sex, most of them don't play you're so amazing. They are pretty much sending you a certain kind of picture as soon as possible. The younger ones anyway. I guess when we're talking about people who are more mature, they might be a little more sophisticated than that. But in general, what I've heard and seen from some people is they get a lot of those special pics that they don't want.
Yeah.
But I think that also has to do with the generational thing a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't get those.
I don't very often.
Yeah.
Every now and then.
I'm dating Travis, but
right.
Him online. I mean, we met through OkCupid.
Okay.
But I will say for, there's a lot of people out there that were messaging me on OkCupid that no way. I mean, no way. Yeah. So you just have to be discerning with other people. And, the whole coffee date, just you set the pace, like, hey, let's just meet for coffee for 45 minutes. Love it. You talk to them on the phone for like 5 minutes before you guys meet, just to see if there's a connection. You'll see if there's enough kind of chemistry over the phone, and there's, you kind of like the sound of their voice, like these kinds of things. Like, there's just that kind of chemistry there before you meet in person.
I feel like today we can almost, and I don't know what you think about this, maybe this is the wrong thing to say, but please let me know your thoughts, because I'm obviously not dating anyone for a long time now. But I think nowadays it's so simple to video chat. And I think a video chat might be just a really smart choice.
Yeah.
Before meeting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. Either way, but it's probably be a better way, because then
you can physically see them. Yeah.
You can physically see them, and if their pictures are outdated or if they're even them.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
Wildflower says, my guy friend just showed me texts from women on Tinder wanting sex only. Well, let me say something about that. There's a lot of prostitutes female prostitutes that are on Tinder and Craigslist that are looking for sex. And there's a lot of police officers that are also on Tinder and Craigslist pretending to be women looking for sex. So, and what tends to happen is they'll get men, they're really good looking, and some of them are legit. Some of them are just women that want to have a one night stand, which is a terrible idea with some random person. It's just so incredibly unsafe. But what their motive tends to be, hey, let's meet at this one place or at a hotel, and then they ask for money. So a lot of that stuff's not even legit.
Yeah. And diseases stuff on top, if it is legit diseases. Think about your future, but anyway.
It's just scary. Did you ever hear that story? It was on like Dateline or something. This couple, young girl, young guy, both good looking, had met on Tinder, and she went to go meet him at like a bar, and he had taken pictures of them, and then they were going to go have sex. They went up to the hotel room. He had his phone, was somehow like recording everything that she was saying. Mm-hmm. And basically, anyway, long story short, somehow she ended up getting out into the balcony and died. And I really think the guy killed her. I mean, if you listen to it, she's begging him to like, let me back in. I'm sorry. Like, please. And just, it's horrific. And I think the guy took all these pictures of her. It was just like this weird kind of memorabilia trophy.
That's creepy. No, I didn't hear about that one.
Totally unnerving. And then he called his dad after she fell from the balcony and told him what had happened. And he's like, oh, and I just happened to have this part of this recorded. I mean, it was like he'd planted an alibi and everything. So there was a woman here in Michigan, like five minutes away from here, who'd met a guy online, and he kidnapped her. And the police happened to see she was in the back seat and her feet were kicking at the window.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, this is how people go missing. I mean, I'm not to be alarmist, but like, you gotta be safe. Like, the world is a crazy place, and err on the side of caution. The most
absolutely
dangerous
agree.
people out there tend to come across as the most charming.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I did a video a while back about the dark triad and how there was a study done where people could see the dark triad in people's faces, right? Like that. But the one place that they missed it most often was women, and women would miss it, rapists. They would be able to see other kinds of criminals off the bat almost instantly without even realizing why. But they would miss the rapists and other women. And so I did the little mini thing on my channel and let them watch through the test. And women were saying, I did not detect the rapist. And that's because, think about it, if you're going to successfully be one of those people, you're going to have to look and act kind of normal to get close enough to a female or a male to hurt them that way. You know what I mean? Or even a child or whatever it is. And I think that's the thing that we have to watch out for. And I'm not being alarmist either, but you just can't be too careful. And if somebody is decent and truly someone that wants to know you and wants to, give it a shot with you, they're going to be patient with you. And if they're not, that's not the one. Yep. I really think that. Yeah.
Oh, I agree 100%. Like, any situation that's going to involve, it's going to cause you mental anguish and make you uncomfortable in order for you to continue in it.
Yeah.
Is not for you.
Right.
The timing is off, or they don't have sincere intentions or whatever. I think a lot of people fall into that. They're like, man, I met this amazing person, and I just don't want my issues to get in the way. And so they're kind of twisting themselves into this emotional pretzel, which can be a problem if this person is, a sociopath or a really manipulative person that doesn't have good intentions, and they're coming across charming, like a Scott Peterson or a Bill Cosby. And they're like, well, man, this person's so amazing. Like, I don't want to miss out. And then boom, fast forward 6 months or 6 weeks, 6 months. And they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, my intuition was screaming at me, but I just didn't want to miss out on a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more common than any of us would like to admit. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Now, this is interesting. James says that what's funny is a lot of times when he says, let's meet for coffee, they'll either offer an alternative or they'll get quiet and then that's the end of it. And I think that's also very telling. Either they're not really who they say they are or there's something else going on. What do you think about that, Dana?
And that could be just, I think certain women, I think, tend to have ideas about what a date should be like.
Mm-hmm.
And so they might be thinking like, well, if he was really interested in me, then maybe he'd take me for dinner or
Mm-hmm.
maybe. And so I would just let them know, hey, you know what? You seem really cool. You know, here's how I like this to go down. You know, let's text a few times, right? The whole goal is to not get emotionally invested in the person before you meet.
Mm-hmm.
So you're texting a few times, you're guarding your time, you're valuing your time, I should say.
Yes.
Texting a few times, maybe you call, you agree, hey, let's meet for a drink somewhere, 45 minutes, and then that's it. And if a woman seems a little bit standoffish, like, why, you know, thinking in her mind, he should pick me up, he should take me for dinner, it's okay to explain that. Hey, you know what? Internet's a crazy place. Like, I think it would make us both more comfortable if we just meet for a drink. I've met a couple people where it's super awkward if we meet for dinner and we're just staring at each other.
Yeah.
And then just let them know like why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. If it goes well, we'll meet again. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely with you on that. Yeah. Let's see here. Angel Party mentions that her mother or her parent was also a narcissist. Someone in her life was. And then she says, I had no idea what it even was until my ex punched me in the face. Am I talking about the same thing here? Oh, I was raised by a narcissistic mother. She said, I'm highly empathic and have been used for narcissistic supply my whole life. I had no idea what it even was until my ex punched me in the face. I literally died and came back. And things were and have been so different since then. He uppercutted my face 7 times. It blew my whole world apart. Angel, I can relate to that. That's horrible. I thankfully did not experience that from an ex. I did experience physical abuse from someone else in my life. And I did not literally die and come back, thank goodness. But I can imagine that it completely blew your whole world apart. But I hope that you're safe and out of there now. And assuming that you are, I would say this is a great time for you to like what Dana's doing. She's like, I need to write these books before I die. She's doing that. Do something that you need to do. Change your trajectory. Don't be a victim. Stand up and start growing forward and doing what feels right and exciting and necessary to you. Like I like Dana, I have things that I'm driven to do what I do because I feel like I'm being sort of directed by something outside of myself.
Yeah.
Something bigger. And what is that for you? Start thinking about what is your passion? What do you really care about? What would you get up out of bed in the morning and do if you didn't need money? Things like that. That's how you find your mission, I think. What are your thoughts about that, Dana?
Yeah, I would agree. And I would take that even a step further. Like, what would you pay to do?
I love that.
I don't know about you, but like when I started getting into this, you know, I had my blog, I was paying, you know, I paid for a domain name, I paid for hosting.
I did all that too.
Right. It was like 100% a passion project.
Yes.
And then I decided to go to YouTube and, you know, that first year or so, I was shoveling a lot of money out of pocket to just do outreach and to get in front of people. And it was, I loved it. It was like an investment in a hobby. And that was, it just juiced me. So I didn't mind. So if you know, okay, this like finding your purpose and stuff, like what are you willing to pay for and pay for in terms of like money and your time? And what do you lose yourself in? Like what juices you, what gives you goosebumps when you think about it?
I love that. Yeah. That's a really excellent point, actually, because you talked about, I literally paid for years. I was doing my business, on the side, which was not coaching at that time. I was doing writing and editing and building websites and things like that for other people, social media management, that kind of stuff. And I did my passion project on the side because I wanted to. I hoped it would become something, but I didn't have time to really throw myself in right away, and not the way I wanted to, not the way I do now. I had to eat and stuff, Right. But I'm with you. I paid for all those. I paid for my domain names. I paid for lots of Yeah, that's a really great point. Thank you so much. That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, Angel added that wait a minute. She added that she did not press charges, but had to flee into a secret support group. Armel, I'm so glad that you had that option, but I still think you should have pressed charges. But I think it's really good that you just got out of there and hopefully are safe at this time.
My goodness. And that's so terrifying when somebody's that violent. I can understand not pressing charges, because sometimes, you know, if you can't just up and disappear, you know, it's between a rock and a hard place. You're like, man, if I press charges, like this person's nuts. Like they might come and get me or get my kids or what have you. So I think you got to do what you got to do. But I'm glad that you found a safe online support group and that you're out of that situation. That's terrifying, because that would not have ended well.
No. Yeah. Angel says, I don't mean to keep talking about her, but
no, it's okay.
She said, I'm highly empathic and I joke and say, I tried to love the devil. We get that, right? Yeah. She said he even told her he was Satan himself. Why didn't she run? But then she adds that I think she's saying there's a whole path of these people she stacked up. And she said, you know, fight or flight. And then I think she's saying she wants to do what we're doing. She said our profession, I think. It's not totally clear to me, but I think that's what she's saying. But she's stuck and frozen, she says. What would you offer her at this point with being stuck and frozen in the fear?
The fear of doing.
I think of moving forward and having been through what she's been through, maybe. Well,
you know, I think the ultimate goal I think some of the best people in this field that are life coaches or therapists or whatnot are the people that have gone through this. So I think it's really a beautiful thing to be able to turn your pain into your power. But at the same time, it can be a lot to deal with the heaviness of everybody else's situation on a regular basis. And it's one of the reasons that I don't do life coaching. I do my support groups and I write about this stuff, but that's it. I feel like any more than that would be too much for me. And so I think it's kind of knowing yourself and like knowing how much you can handle. And it's okay. Like if now is not the time for you and you're still needing to heal and what have you, then definitely do that. If you wanted to get more into life coaching and focus more on this topic, you know, then we could probably have this conversation with you another time and kind of get more in depth about all that.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. I think that if you are still in any way in danger, if you're still being abused in any way, or you're not, you know, fully healed to the point that you can just be openly, honestly, raw with people about what you went through without crying. I cry a little sometimes, not very often, but only when I'm talking about triggery things. But it's hard to coach people. It's hard to, you know, especially if you have, like, I've cut my schedule way down because the coaching schedule, because I can't do it every day. So I only do it 2 days a week, sometimes 3 days a week, and only for existing clients on that third day. It's rare that I do a third day. And the reason is because it is emotionally difficult for any survivor. And so if you're still close to it, it's really hard to go. You're absolutely right. And crying is okay. It's human. Thank you so much, Miss K. And it's true. Yeah. Oh, I don't mean to keep but can I just throw this in there? Tatiana, the one that was talking about being a narcissist, she said, thank you for answering my questions. I recently realized that my father is a narcissist, and I definitely have that narcissist thinking pattern in my head. Sometimes I think I'm better than everyone, and sometimes I don't realize that I'm hurting someone. Since I noticed this, I try to stop that thinking. I don't feel evil like full-on narcissist. Could I maybe be a covert? I think you could, but I don't think that's what we're dealing with here. I think you're dealing with what I mentioned, narcissistic fleas. I don't know, Dana, do you have a video on narcissistic fleas?
I don't know.
Okay.
Do you have
Well,
one?
search it. I don't know if Dana has it. I have one. I'm sure I know other people have them too. Search it on YouTube and see what we're talking about. Tatiana, I think
Mhm.
that's probably what you're looking for. Dana, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's so common. I think every single person that's got a narcissist or a narcissistic parent
Yep.
is going to pick up. I mean, it's the whole kind of, we're very influenced by our environment as children and as adults. And if we're around somebody that's kind of got this dysfunctional way of thinking and feeling and acting, we're going to pick up that. And
Sure.
I mean, there's things, I think within everybody, really, they're like, you know what, I would like to work on that. Or you catch yourself there's things I catch myself doing where
Yeah.
I'm like, boy, that was really inconsiderate. Or, things I would like to do better. That doesn't make a person a narcissist. It just means that you have, if anything, it's the opposite. It's like, it shows that you have that self-awareness and that you have that concern for other people, that you want to connect more to them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
In fact, they were mentioning, and I don't know if you have this on your site or not. Is it all right with you if I share a link with them
Sure.
to? Okay. I have the narcissistic personality inventory test actually on Queen Being right now. So I will just send a link in your, for somebody was mentioning that. That's why I'm asking, or why I asked if it was okay with you. Do you have that test on any of your sites before I do that?
No, I don't, but go ahead and share it. I would just caution people.
It's
No,
only
it's a very broad brush test, and these kinds of tests, they're not an exact science. And so a lot of people, the people running around out there that are like, I'm a psychopath, I am a narcissist. And these tests, if you look at them, you're like, this would seriously take anybody with 5 minutes of understanding of narcissism to be able to score either way.
Yeah.
So just kind of understand that going into it. But if you have empathy and remorse and you have a genuine concern about other people, I guess I would ask you, who are you when nobody's looking?
Great question.
Think about it that way. How are you with other people? How are you with animals? Do you have guilt? Do you have shame? Do you experience these emotions? And
do you feel like if you see, and I'm not even going to share the link because it's not even going to let me, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but
okay.
You can find it at queenbeing.com or anywhere, really, the NPI and Narcissistic Personality Inventory Test. But I think you made a very good point. So I'm kind of glad that you mentioned that, because I think that we can easily misjudge ourselves based on other people's perception of us.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And my guess would be that a lot of empaths and people would tend to, I think anyhow, we tend to be, we all have blind spots about ourselves. So we don't tend to be the most accurate historian when it comes to our own, our own issues. So it's hard. It's just hard. It's hard for people to see kind of the splinter in their eye, but it's easier for us to see the it's hard for us to see the log in our own eye. It's easy for us to see the splinter in everybody else's eye.
That's so true.
Yeah. Empaths in general, we tend to, because we're so in tune with other people, we tend to think, people even talking about setting boundaries, they often misinterpret that as being hypervigilant, being mean, being cruel, being standoffish, all of this stuff. So I just would caution that.
And also narcissists tend to project, especially narcissist parents, their worst qualities onto us. And they tend to want us to feel bad about ourselves, I think, more often than,
yes.
Yeah.
If you've got a problematic person in your life who's been telling you, you're so difficult, you don't listen, you're selfish, you're mean, you're all of these things, but you're thinking to yourself, that's so weird. I feel like that's who they are. And you're confused, and that's projection. They're putting all their stuff onto you. And so just kind of take that in mind if you're going to take any type of self-assessment kind of exam. Who are you when nobody's looking? That's just the best way I can think to describe it.
Yeah.
Because
Go
Well, like when I was doing my red flag series, there were certain flags in there where I was like, oh my God, could I be a narcissist and just not know it? Like the whole love bombing, the rushing of intimacy, a lot of that stuff. And it really freaked me out. And it took me a while. I'm like, Dana, like seriously, just, I had to keep going back to that. Like, who are you when nobody's looking? Like like you do nice things for people that other people will never find out about. Like you care, you know what I mean? Like you have guilt, you have empathy, you have concern, you connect to others,
Yep.
you're good.
Yeah.
So this stuff can really rattle any of us. That's what I guess I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. And I think something that I've done with a lot of my clients and I've done over on my channel, I'll just tell you guys here, is if you take a few minutes and you write down all those negative perceptions you have about yourself, let it sit overnight. Next morning, look at it. Think about who may have said those things to you. Were those things you thought of yourself, or did your mother or your father or your ex or your brother or the bully at school say those things and you internalize them? And then I like to tell people to cross those things out and write their new truth next to it and live there in their new truth, in their real truth. Because those things that were told to you about yourself or those things you believed about yourself because of abuse, those things usually aren't true. So in addition to all of those other things that we said, try that.
Yeah. I think that's a great tip for sure.
Yeah. And did you read what Stephanie wrote yet? Or did I miss it? She said,
no, go for it.
Okay. She said, Tatiana may be overcompensating for being made to feel invisible and not worthy by a narcissistic parent. Her brain may be trying to convince herself that she's a good person. And I think that's a legitimate statement as well.
Well, and I think back to who the kind of person I was 20 years ago and coming out of kind of this dysfunctional home life, I really had an axe to grind. And the young version of me, I was weird because I was still like super into caring for other people. But I had these bouts where I would just feel like really high and mighty and I would feel superior. And I think that was more, well, I don't know. I don't know if that was more of like the codependent thing. Like nobody else can do this right. It's got to be me kind of a thing. Like I am, especially when it comes to caregiving and taking care of other people. But there were some things about me that I did not, that were gross. Like I didn't like those character traits. And
I can relate.
Yeah, there's still times where I get really, and I think it's just part of the full range of emotions. I think we all kind of have this stuff from time to time. It's whether or not, we tend to be like locked into that. And if you can see it, you know what I mean? Like I can, like I can feel myself when I get irritated or when I just start acting in ways that's not how I normally am. And I'm not able to, pull back. And so
I get it. And sometimes it's about self-awareness that helps you to, excuse me, my nose is so itchy. It's self-awareness, I think. And when you are self-aware, like you said, you've noticed XYZ about yourself, whatever it is, I'm just a mess over here today. Then you can make change. You can create change when you can acknowledge this is what we have over narcissists and also people in general who haven't had to, we were forced, I think, as survivors of abuse to sort of, like I said, and like you said, re-examine everything that we knew to be true up to a point, right? And at least for those of us who came out of the home growing up, I think I didn't know who I was at all. I mean, I had a concept, I had a general like, well, I think I'm like this. I'm not really sure, I mean, I knew, but, and so we're always evolving, I guess is my point. My nose is so itchy. I used to be horribly jealous of my husband. He's never once even given me a single reason to feel that way. But I used to feel really, 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 really jealous about any other female within 20 feet of him. Okay. Or on the TV. It was ridiculous, but it was all going back to my ex-husband and the way he treated me. And once I really started to examine it, I realized my narcissist parent went through some stuff of her own. I'm not going to go into all of that, but she was very clear on that she would remove certain parts of people's bodies if they cheated on her. I'll just leave it at that. And so that was what I grew up seeing. And so it took me a long time to go, not that long, several years though, to recognize in myself that it was, I think I even knew at the beginning of this relationship that it was never about him. And I even said that to him, but that doesn't make it any better, because it's still, it was rough. And when I was pregnant, it was worse. And I think my first time we were pregnant together, because I was pregnant from, I have an older child, a 21-year-old, almost 21. But when I was pregnant with him, that's when my ex started his worst, that type of behavior that worried me. And so with this husband, when I was pregnant with our first child, I triggered during that pregnancy, and it was horrible, but life-changing. And the reason I'm telling you that is because that was the thing that forced me to look at myself, because here I had this person who was not giving me any reason to feel that way. None at all. I knew where he was 24/7. I still do today. Not that I care anymore, because now I send him on vacation with his friend. I'm like, go on vacation. I need a break. But that would have never happened, 15, 16 years ago. So it's a process. But my point is, when you go through stuff like that, and you recognize the reasons that those things exist, and then you admit to yourself that, okay, maybe this isn't really what I want to be. Maybe this isn't really a good thing about me. Then you can start to choose to create change that is positive and effective, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think too, for me, I'm 40, and I don't think I really had a solid grip on who I was up until probably about 2 or 3 years ago, or about about 3 years ago.
I can relate.
And so I feel like I was very self-centered for a very long time, because I was so focused on trying to get myself figured out, because I was in such a scramble. Yeah. And I think that was a big problem in our marriage, is because I was like, I needed to get financially stable. I needed to get emotionally stable. I just had a lot of stuff to work through. It wasn't that I didn't care about other people. It was just, I was in an emotional scramble. And so even still, like, I have to, like, if I'm writing a book, or if I'm really immersed in a project, I don't do well with switching gears. And so I have to make it a conscious point to do that. So I am a good girlfriend and a good friend and all of that. That's stuff just comes better for other people. And then I feel terrible. Like if I forget plans, or, I'm too busy or whatnot. So
I have the same problem.
Yeah.
With the switching gears thing. I used to get angry. Like my husband would come home and be like, hey, you want to talk? Can you come out of your office for a minute so we can talk or whatever? I would be like, I'm really in the middle of something right now. I just don't, and then just like you said, I recognized that was a bad choice, and I needed to give him a certain amount of attention, in order to be a decent wife. So I get it. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it's like PTSD or if it's like ADD or what, but I think creative minds in general we zero in on what we're working on, and I go all in mentally on everything I'm working on. And so I lose track of time, and people will talk to me and I'll be like, yeah. You can't believe the things I've said yes to without realizing it. Moving on.
Yeah. I hear you. Totally hear you. Mariella asks, how about when narcissists display empathy for specific people?
Ooh, I love that.
Can be really confusing. So both of my exes came across like the world's greatest guys. If you were to meet them, they were the kind of guys that I think most parents would hope that their child ends up with. Yeah. Like they really did a great job of coming across as charming and caring and concerned. Shoveling the neighbor's walk, and just very, very helpful and seemingly very empathetic. I don't quite know how to reconcile that with the side of them that I experienced. Part of me feels like that was more of them just trying to convince themselves that they were a good person, as well as to try to kind of keep this mask on for other people. They compartmentalize a lot of different things. And so it's, like Bill Cosby's wife, was like, he was an amazing husband for 40 something years. So she didn't see that side of him. His daughter, I don't think really saw that side of him. That's kind of common, because they do tend to really compartmentalize things.
That's true. Yeah.
It's
I didn't mean to interrupt.
no,
I
go for
think,
it.
I think in some cases it's also a matter of, they're manipulating you. My ex, and part of the reason that I was insane for a while is he would only he would show empathy only to attractive women outside of,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. He was messing with my head. And I went into it without a jealous bone in my body, I thought. But I became just hyper vigilant of it. And it really messed with my head. It took me a long time to get over it, but thank goodness I did, because that was horrible. And I wrote about it. That's how I got through it. I wrote about it and I researched it and I figured it all out and la. But what I didn't know while I was doing all that research was that it really wasn't me to begin with, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's absolutely where that, I think, another potential reason that they do that. Some people, some narcissists, intentionally try to hurt their primary source of, uh, or if it's not a woman or man and whatever y'all are into, it could be like, you're a writer and they're really into this other writer, but not you, or
Yes.
whatever,
Yeah, that's a really valid point, because I think a lot of targets, they're like, man, they were so awful to me, but now they're so wonderful to this new person. And then it kind of leads them to think like, man, if I had just hung on, or if maybe there is something wrong with me, because now this new person's getting the happily ever after that I wanted with them. And like, they seem to be great. So what gives? And really, more often than not, what you're seeing is that's just the idealized stage for the next target. If you're dealing with the pathological person, like, communication's not the issue, perception is not the issue, it's their personality that's the issue. And that stuff's going to continue to keep coming up until they ever effectively resolve it. But because they don't have the insight or the desire to, it won't ever be resolved.
Right.
So it's just going to keep continuing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you want to do 2 more questions and then we'll call it?
Sounds good.
Okay. We've got a couple questions here about sleeping, and Bluebird says it's been 3 months, I think she said, of going no contact, and she's having trouble being completely functional. She's just feeling exhausted and having a hard time doing things.
I think that's normal, because you're going through this. I kind of think, was it you that no, it was I was talking to a client the other day about the same thing. I think that the work of healing is so much bigger than we think. And I think it's a different type of energy that it takes. As you're going through this process, you're going to find yourself like, I don't, it could be that you're forming new neural pathways as you're going through a proper healing process, or it could be that you're overwhelming yourself with trying to do it all at once. It could be that you haven't allowed yourself to go through the process of grieving. There are so many possibilities as to why. Are you depressed? Are you, give us a little, give us more information, but I'll also to start, self-care in a big, huge way, focusing on making sure you're eating enough, eating well, drinking enough water every day. Sometimes if you just start drinking water, you'll feel better. It just depends on the specific nature of your exhaustion. But I would love to hear Dana's thoughts on this.
Yeah. Stress in itself is exhausting. And even though like we might not realize that we're feeling stressed, it's like, no, I just feel like emotionally devastated and depressed. And I think about them all the time. And I don't feel like, it might not even register as stress, but it's just this debilitating level of like emotional exhaustion. These relationships, it's just such a roller coaster of highs and lows. And when a person's just done with it, stress in general, can just lay a person out and for months. So like Angie's saying, really triple up on your self-care and allow yourself the time you need to rest. Just be extra nourishing to yourself, fruits and vegetables and water and, tea. And I kind of refer to it as like kind of nursing yourself through the emotional flu. Like when you have the flu, you're done. It's a good day if you can take a shower because you just have no energy. And it's allowing yourself tomato soup and hot tea and, movie marathon, and you stay in bed and you just do as much of this kind of stuff as you can, and realize that, your brain's going to come back online. Your sleep patterns will get back in sync. Like these things, it's just when you're in the beginning of it, and 3 months is still in the very beginning of it for most people.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes time for your brain to just process everything that's going on.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, unless you have another one, I've got one Dandelion Greens says her friend's mother was horrifically abusive to her, the friend, but not at all to her two brothers. And I don't know how this is relevant, but this mother also loved birds and gardening. But I would say this, I would look into birth, what is it called, Dana? Family structure, toxic family structure. Yeah. You have your scapegoat child, you have your golden child, you have your lost child, and you have the fact that these toxic families tend to like shift roles over the course of the relationships. And so I think that it sounds to me like I see this commonly. I saw it in my own life as well. My brother didn't experience the same childhood I did. And I think it's about partially the fact that, she was a female, and the mother was the mother was a narcissist, the female mother. Narcissistic women are very often threatened by their daughters, just as narcissistic men are threatened by their sons. And I think or they try to live through them either way, but very often feel threatened by their daughters as they get into puberty and start to look like women instead of little girls. And
getting all that attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they do. I have a 10-year-old who's starting to get little, I'm not going to talk about her because she's only 10, but I don't feel that way at all. I feel like, let me protect her and make sure she's safe and everything. But,
right.
I think she's more attractive than me. And I'm thrilled with that, because good for me for making a beautiful baby. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I, and that sounds narcissistic right there, but I don't mean it like that.
No. Yeah.
We all think our babies are beautiful, but I think my point is that I think that could have been part of it. And the other side of it is she may have just happened to have been the scapegoat child, the one who gets the abuse. So what do you think, Dana?
It's so hard to even kind of figure out the mind of an abusive person. Sometimes I think they see character traits in a certain child that either they weren't allowed to have, and so now that child's targeted, or traits that they were never able to cultivate. The movie, did you ever see the movie Riding in Cars with Boys?
Yes, I just got goosebumps. I love that movie.
That's a fantastic movie. And it's kind of this narcissistic mother, and this woman has her whole life ahead of her, and she gets pregnant really young, and it's basically just this story of getting pregnant at a young age, and she's, if I remember it correctly, she just really takes a lot of it out. She's very resentful that she's a mother. And but anyhow, I had a friend who was horrifically abused by her mother, and to just a disgusting degree. And I had asked her about it because her other two sisters weren't. And she said that she really feels that she was a free spirit and very creative and artistic, and her mother hated that about her. And I don't know if her mother had been artistic and like that just didn't really go anywhere, but she just targeted this one child to like a crazy degree.
Yeah, it's horrible. If nothing else, let it be a guide to how not to be a parent.
For real.
That's the way I see it. I definitely had one of those. So yeah, I'm with y'all.
On that note, I think there's a lot of people out there that did have a narcissistic parent, and they're terrified. They're like, I don't want my kids to be like that. I don't want to be that kind of parent. And just like you said, okay, these kinds of people, I call them or refer to them as reverse role models. So you can literally just do the opposite of what they did, and you're good.
Yeah. And I think it's also about empathy. You have to have empathy for your children, and narcissists, they don't. They see their children as non-people. I knew I was non-people when I didn't think it. I knew I was not as good as everybody else in the world growing up. Not that I'm saying that was true, but as a child, I didn't think it. I didn't believe it. I knew it for sure. And so if you think about that, like what if I don't want my children to be narcissistic because I'm like, always like, you're the best, you're perfect, blah, blah, blah. But do I tell them they're beautiful and smart and intelligent and capable? Yep, I sure do. And if they make a mistake, I tell them about that too, but not in a way that I don't want to destroy them psychologically. I want them to be enriched by whatever I have to say, and helped. And I don't think it benefits to beat a child. I don't hit my children. I would never do that because I know that doesn't work. I know that making a child physically afraid to come home so much that their stomach hurts, that it doesn't work. It doesn't make that child a better person. It makes a child a scared person, and it's wrong. And I just,
Yeah.
And Mariella, yes, they can and do have abandonment issues. Yes, they can and do. All right. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah. Well, I think we're over. What time?
Yeah, we're way over.
Oh my God. Yes. Okay.
But we're okay with it this time. Yeah, it's all good.
Okay.
We got into it.
So next Tuesday, we'll be over at Angie's channel. So you guys, if you haven't already subscribed over there, please go do that. She's over on YouTube, Angie Atkinson.
Mhm.
You can find her. And we do these every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Mhm.
So
We alternate channels.
yes, we alternate channels. Yes. And thank you, Angie, for a great live stream. And I will talk to you next week.
Sounds good, girl.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you girl. Okay. I'll see you later.
Okay. Bye.